Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's, I think, Wednesday, May 13th. Welcome. My name is Katie Crysdale. I think I recognize everyone, so most of you have been here before. I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger. One moment. Good morning. Sorry about my internet. It is what it is. I'm looking forward to, in the future, uploading videos. I've done some sound bites offline, and with no internet involved, the quality has been much, much better. I posted a little bit of a video log on Sunday, Monday on our YouTube channel, and the quality is just so crisp because I recorded it offline and then uploaded it to YouTube, and it was like, it was so exciting. So welcome, those of you that are here. I see lots of people that I recognize. Thank you for being here. I know there's a lot of competing things today. The virtual Saskatchewan-Manitoba Aquatic Conference is still on today, so I will be catching up with that later. That is a 2-day conference offered by the Canadian Red Cross. And it was intended for the province of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. It is typically an in-person conference every May, but this year they did it virtually, which was really, really exciting. And they have over 137 people registered from across Canada and the United States. So that's been really great. I know lots of people today, they won't be attending this webinar because the other one is live. And at this point, most of you know that you can catch any of these recordings recorded on YouTube. If you didn't know that, I will post that link in the chat box. So all of the webinar recordings are on YouTube when I can get them up. So this morning, I just uploaded Trevor Sherwood from Pool Operation Management. His session was last Wednesday, May 6th. That feels like so long ago. That one I just uploaded on YouTube this morning. That's ready to go. The show notes for that session are completely done. I can also post those in the chat box. This morning, I was also working on the show notes for Monday. Maria Bella from Aqua Conscience was here talking about drowning in lifeguarded pools. So I'm working on getting those show notes done next. And if you're paying attention, I'm just skipping Friday, May 8th, the aquatics inventory, because I have to do more video editing with that. Whereas Maria Bella's session only had, I think we had one sound issue in the middle for maybe a minute. That's much easier to edit than the Equitable Aquatics inventory we had with Kate Connell and Sydney Stadola on Friday requires a few more video edits. So I am working on that. It does exist. It's just going to take me a little bit longer. I'm sure each of you has strategies for how you deal with workload, and my procrastination sometimes is move the worst thing to the end, right? Which is not always recommended. So hi, Julie in Perryville, Missouri. Hopefully things are still going well. You're 2 or 3 days into reopening your pool in Missouri. So let us know how that's been going. Anything that you have learned, let us know. I just want to write myself a note. Yesterday in my session for the virtual Manitoba and Saskatchewan Aquatic Conference, I did address a lot of the concerns we have in Canada for Canadian pools reopening. So that session is recorded. I do not know when I will be permitted to reshare that recording. Currently, the recording is only available to conference registrants, and I know there will be a paywall for a while. I don't know if that will be 2 weeks, 2 months, what that looks like, but I am hopeful that I can provide a webinar recording of the session I delivered yesterday, that I can post it on our YouTube channel in the future. But in the interim, what I can share with those of you who were not at that conference yesterday, I can share with you the slides as a file. So I will go ahead and pop that in the show notes. If you are interested in looking at my PowerPoint presentation from yesterday, I have it uploaded as a PDF on our website. It is also pinned in the show notes for today. So let me give you guys the show notes for today's session. You can also open the PDF of my session yesterday. So Julie, I see your comment. You're having challenges with seniors social distancing. So Julie, was that they don't believe in COVID, or they believe that the situation is over and there is no need for physical distancing? Were they accidentally forgetting, approaching staff? What does that look like? Let us know. Those of you that have come in, I see Christine is here from Las Vegas, Nevada. Anybody else, let me know your city, your state. That's a good refresher for me. Your province. I see Lauren is here. You were at our session on Monday as well, Lauren, which is great. I am also working on the recording for the Alberta Association of Aquatic Professionals meeting that Lakeview Aquatic Consultants hosted on Monday. So that will also be available on our YouTube channel for anybody to watch. Great thing in Monday's session is we had the opportunity to talk with Kevin Jaroncic, who is the main contact for Alberta Health Services as it relates to swimming pools. So he shared lots of great information and insights about swimming pools in Alberta and the process we can anticipate for Alberta pools to reopen. Swimming pools in Alberta are in phase 3, which is quite a ways away, seeing as we are in phase 1 and we have no understanding of how long phase 1 will last or restart or extend. And certainly we are all in Canada watching with bated breath as the province of Quebec sends some students back to schools. We are watching Germany as they experience a resurgence in coronavirus cases after they've reopened. So Kevin brought us some great information about Alberta pools. I recognize that many of you are not in Alberta, but his measured approach as a trained health inspector, an epidemiologist, and a certified pool operator instructor was also really, really great. So Julie is saying it's unclear about the seniors. They just feel safe in the water. So I think that's one of the challenges, is that when we leave our homes, we might think it's over unintentionally. Like, we might still understand that COVID is a risk to people, but now that we're out of our houses, that physical barrier of accidentally doing something has been removed. So that's definitely a concern. Christine is saying perhaps it's harder to change the older the tradition or the older you are, but it is true. Older individuals, they have a hard time with change, both willingly as well as unconsciously, right? Old habits. And I would tend to think with a lot of the clients Julie is mentioning, part of it is conditioning. If you've been around for 80 years on this planet, even if the government says we need to maintain physical distance, if you grow up in a community or a culture where it is comfortable and appropriate for you to come close to somebody, to shake hands, to make eye contact, to be in a close physical space, it's going to be very difficult to undo that, especially if you're living perhaps in a seniors community where healthcare aides or nurses, they have masks and they're not less concerned about physical distancing, but they've taken safety protocols that our lifeguards, our front desk reception staff can't necessarily take. So if you have any thoughts like that, feel free to jump on in. We'll have a smaller group today, probably just based on, I noticed that the governor of Arizona, they announced yesterday that swimming pools can reopen in the state of Arizona. So I'm wishing all of you in Arizona the best. That's a very difficult situation to be in. I know there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety about what that looks like in terms of aquatics, as well as health and safety for the community in a warmer climate where it's potentially very dangerous with lots of people coming together in a swimming pool, in the change rooms, in a public space. I know the state of Texas has done something similar. So the governor last week of the state of Texas indicated that pools were permitted to reopen. In some locations, San Antonio, city of Austin, the municipal guidelines prohibit pools reopening. So there's the state guideline and then a stricter local municipal guideline, but it's still challenging. I saw one Instagram post yesterday from a Texas-based pool company that is restarting their lifeguard training today. So I definitely feel for those of you that are uncertain about what you're doing, what you want to do, what you need to do. So I have pinned in the chat box my slides from a session I delivered yesterday. So Julie is saying in her community in Missouri, they only had 49 cases out of 24,000 citizens. So the scarcity certainly adds to some people's either suspicion or lack of concern. It depends on the community. I know there's a small town in Alberta, northern Alberta. I spoke with the aquatics manager in April regarding a pool issue, and they had 8 cases in their town of 2,500, and now they're up to 18 cases, I believe, when I spoke to her 2 weeks ago, of which there were 2 or 3 fatalities. So it really has hit different communities in different ways, and it is the reality of the situation. So anyway, if you have thoughts, feel free to join us. We're just doing a bit of a pre-show if you've never been here. We do a pre-show until a minute or two after the hour, and then our speaker will get started. I'm very excited for today's speaker. It's going to be a good mix of discussion and taking your Q&A. Often when we do these sessions, we don't have enough time for questions and answers, or we don't have enough time to really address individual kind of subtopics. So I'm hopeful today that we can really address any specific concerns you have. And if we don't have the answers, we'll try and find them for you. Certainly with COVID, there's a lot that we don't know, but a good health and safety conscious mindset will really go a long way in anticipating a lot of the challenges and then going to find your local legislation, organization, policy is great. Christine is saying she subbed for a water aerobics class, mostly of over 55, and they were not having it even then. The workout was written by the usual instructor. So Christine, we've all been there, that favorite, beloved aquatic fitness instructor. That's who they want. That's who they're accustomed to spending their social hour with, their connection with each week. It's very different for a lot of those elderly populations, seniors, to adjust to change. That's what we've been chatting about a little bit, is some of the challenges that individuals or facilities are facing getting back into the pool. Welcome. I see Dana here from Bonnyville. Bonnyville is located in Alberta, so north of me, smaller town north of Edmonton. Other things that have been going on, I mentioned the show notes for last Wednesday are now updated. I'm working on the recording for both Friday and Monday, as well as the recording for the Alberta Association of Aquatic Professionals meeting. I was also lucky Monday, unfortunately, the person called me too late for the meeting, but after the Alberta Association of Aquatic Professionals meeting, I was able to record a short soundbite. I think it was maybe 8 minutes once I edited it, with the CAO from the town of Devon here in Alberta. The town of Devon announced a couple weeks ago that their pools will be closed for the summer. At the time, that was a very unique position that a town or facility was taking in Alberta. Yesterday, being Tuesday, May 12th, the city of Edmonton just announced that all of their outdoor pools, spray parks, and splash pads will be closed for the entire summer. And I would anticipate in Canada that we will start to see that more wide sweeping, both in union aquatic environments, different facilities. Up until now, it's been either revenue or staffing related. So the city of Halifax, Nova Scotia had announced that they were not going to be staffing waterfront beaches, boat launches, their outdoor facilities back in April. It was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now. That was a budget concern. They laid off 1,400 people in Halifax. Yesterday, the city of Edmonton, they're a union environment. They have been working pretty steadily on their swimming pools during shutdowns. Staffing levels have been fairly intact, is my understanding. But certainly looking at summer, there's a lot of pools that it's just not going to make sense to reopen when Alberta has stated that swimming pools are part of phase 3. So if you're just joining in, I see Allison is here from Perth, Ontario. Welcome. I've been to Perth many times. I grew up in Ottawa. We used to go to Perth from my summer camp when I was a counselor at Camp Oconto in Titchborne. We used to drive to Perth for Dairy Queen at night before they closed at 10. We'd leave our staff meeting at 9:15 and speed to Perth to get Dairy Queen sometimes, which was great. Welcome. Evan is here from Arlington. Barb is here from Pittsburgh. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. Let me know in your individual states. I don't know about Pennsylvania, how things have been for you with COVID, if there's any hints of reopening. I mentioned a little bit earlier in the pre-show, Texas is reopening pools. Arizona yesterday, the governor announced that they're reopening pools. Obviously, every state, region, province is different, but it is very interesting to watch. We have a little bit of privilege here in Canada that it's a long way away from us, and I know it is a long way away from those of you in harder hit US states, that we can plan and anticipate our own reopening in looking at what works or what doesn't work in other locations. So hopefully you've been having a good week. Hopefully things are good where you are. We are May 13th. So basically, I'm just thinking for myself, COVID got serious in Alberta around March 14th, 15th for the announcements of our swimming pool closures. So we're heading up on 2 months, which is quite a bit of time, but at this stage, it is what it is. So I popped the PowerPoint slides for the session that I did yesterday. It was not a POOLaide webinar. I'm hopeful that the recording will be available for distribution in the future, but it will not be anytime soon. It will be probably, I would guess, probably 2 or 3 months from now that it would be available for me to reshare. Welcome, Jennifer's here from Ohio. I will now pin the show notes for today. We will get started in about 10 minutes. Let me just pin those in the chat box. Nothing really going on today. I could mention the last couple sessions. So this is the 5th of the remaining 5 sessions, the POOLaide webinars. If you've joined us in the last couple of weeks, these webinars have been running since March 23rd. So we've been doing this for quite a while. All of these show notes and all of the recordings for all of the sessions are available on our website. So let me post that link in the chat box. If you have not seen all of the sessions or you're interested in looking into other sessions that we've had, those are all located on the main page. Coming up in the next week, we have the final few sessions, so I will go through those now. As you're joining in, please let me know where you're from. That's also helpful to our presenter. I see Tracy's here from Charlottesville, Virginia. Rick is here from UC Santa Barbara. Welcome. So for the final few webinars that we've got going on, today we're talking health and safety. You're in the room, so you know that. Friday, May 15th, so 2 days from now, our last session for this week, we're going to be talking about grants, so grants and funding. And it's not a specific session about how to apply for a specific grant in Canada or the US. It is simply looking at how can you get your different aquatic projects up and running. And I think this will be particularly acute to discuss with COVID, reducing our budgets and reducing the revenue and the operating expense budgets that we have in the next couple months. So Lauren's here from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Sherry from Portland, Texas, Elizabeth from Pennsylvania, Benita from Virginia Beach, welcome. So that's Friday's session, grants and funding, general overview. Then on Monday, we have 2 ladies from the University of North Texas at Denton. They're going to be talking about online in-service, not just now during COVID, but also in the future. So I've really asked them to focus on what they've been doing, lessons learned. They will go through the process in greater detail than the snapshot we had a couple weeks ago from Adam at the City of Austin in Texas. These ladies will be doing a full session both on how they've done online in-service for their aquatic department during the last 2 months, the whole process from development, implementation, troubleshooting different softwares. And then they're also going to carry that forward into how can we use online in-service or meetings in the future for our aquatic environment. Then next week, so that's Monday, May 18th. Wednesday, May 20th, we're going to have a conversation about budget narratives. So this is an individual that I worked with for a while, and she really, really helped me to understand how to develop budgets and implement budgets. And this is not going to be a finance session where we talk about specific budgets and how to do a financial budget, but it's really going to be saying, what is the process when we're committing to a financial project? What are some considerations post-COVID with budgets? What are some ways that we can negotiate and collaborate and get agreement on implementation of different projects? The presenter is going to be excellent. So if the topic sounds a little bit confusing and not well defined, that's not the case. She has a plan. I just don't necessarily, I can't articulate how she's going to run it. She's an excellent presenter, so I highly recommend next Wednesday's session. And then the last one, because we're all sick of webinars and it's time to go on hiatus, Friday, May 22nd will be the last one with me. I will be doing a big Q&A as well as discussing different questions that I've had about me and my business. So if you'd like to contribute to the Q&A ahead of time, I would appreciate that. We have a link. I'm just going to post this in the chat box. I'll pin this one temporarily. The Padlet Q&A for next Friday, May 22nd. It's very helpful to me to know what topics you would like to hear discussed, what questions you have, what comments. Sometimes the chat box is very active. Sometimes the chat box is not very active. So it's hard for me to know what you want to hear about, especially you guys can't see, but I'm literally just talking to myself, right? So it's helpful when I get feedback. If you can anonymously add feedback to the Padlet, so the link I have put in the chat box, that blue hyperlink, that helps me to know what information you would like to hear about. So please fill that in if you've got a few minutes. Corey, for some reason you're a presenter today, so I'm just going to make you an attendee. Not sure how that happened. Sorry about that, Corey. We will be starting in a few minutes. No, Corey, I wouldn't have said, surprise, Corey's our sneak peek today. It must have been just cookies or a cache from when you spoke a few weeks ago. Don't worry. I would never do that to someone. What was the other thing I was going to say for next Friday? Oh, next Friday, May 22nd. If you are free, and I realize a lot of people will not be free, they're back in their office or they're working on a more structured schedule now, but if you have the opportunity to come next Friday, May 22nd, I did have a sponsor yesterday reached out to me and they want to give away 2 $100 gift cards, Amazon gift cards next week to participants as a thank you for me for putting on these sessions. So I've had lots of different interest from different sponsors, different brands, some of whom I love, some of whom I don't love, some of whom are very lazy in their proposals and their pitching. And there's a lot of people I fended off with a stick because I want POOLaide to really represent quality, and it's not meant to be one long, laundry list of lazy sponsorship. But I did hear from a brand yesterday near me in Alberta, and they just sort of said, no, mention who we are, but this is not a sales pitch. We just want to do a giveaway to support what I've been doing. So I'm super excited. Anyone who attends the webinar will be eligible, whether you're Canadian, American, French, who knows, wherever you're located, they will do a voucher for an Amazon gift card, $100. Can't guarantee it'll be $100 US. It might be $100 Canadian, but I mean, money is still money. So that will be next Friday. I'll put a mention in the Instagram later this week once we narrow down the details. Julie is moving the college grad home for the summer. Well, congratulations that your child is finished with college. So finished, or I guess finished for the season. I was thinking forever, but probably just for the season. Barbara, you should be able to see me. So if you can't see me, I would exit the room and come back in. You can use the same link in your inbox registration. You can go out and you can come back in. So thanks for those of you who are here. We will be starting in 1 or 2 minutes. I know there's a lot going on out in the aquatics world, in the real world. So these are the last few webinars we're going to be finishing up. All of the recordings will be on YouTube, but we know that there's a lot of different competing webinars and shows and recordings and Zoom calls. So I appreciate you being here today. I see Jody's here from Pima County near Tucson. I was mentioning earlier, Jody, that Arizona, I heard from Kelly Martinez yesterday that the governor had announced that your pools can reopen. So good luck with that. It's challenging. I see Colm here from Farmington, Minnesota. So welcome. If you're just popping in, let me know your location. We'll start shortly. I've been talking in the pre-show, and this will be available in the recording, was just sharing the upcoming links for our last few webinars. So we have 4 left after today, then we're going on hiatus. We will, i.e. myself, Katie Crysdale, and Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, we will be doing something with POOLaide in the future, later this summer. But all of those announcements will be finalized on our website, on our Facebook page. I will give a sneak peek in the final show next Friday, but I don't think I will have every last detail sorted out. So follow us on Facebook. That is where all big announcements are typically made, or on Instagram. Very active on Instagram. I'm super excited. Yes, it's an arbitrary number, but I was super excited to roll over 1,000 people a few days ago, particularly because when I started my Instagram account 3 years ago, I had no idea how hard it would be to get that many likes and followers. So you wake up one morning and you think, you know, I'm just gonna have an Instagram account and I want 1,000 followers. Well, let me tell you, 3 years later, that's how long it took me. So welcome. I see, let me just scroll back a moment. Tanya's down the street from me in Okotoks. Hello, Tanya. Glenn is here from Hawaii. So wish that I was in Hawaii right now. Beaches, sunshine, a little bit more scenic than Alberta. Milan's here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Stephanie from North Texas. Lori from Key West, Florida. Marcy's here from High River. Carrie, you've got some support. Kathy from New Jersey. Troy from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Andrea, so glad you got in. Karen is here from Morro Bay, California. So welcome, everyone. Kathy from Danville, Virginia. Good mix today. It's all about quality, not quantity, right? Jean is here from Massachusetts. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to do my introduction and then we'll get started. So today is Wednesday, May 13th, and we are still recording the last couple webinars during the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you're new here, the POOLaide webinars, all of the recordings are available on YouTube. You can find all of the previous sessions available to replay, rewatch. All of the show notes are available. We create detailed links to everything that's discussed by our presenters, as well as resources that they make available. So today, let me pin the show notes for today. One moment. I'm scrolling back up. So I've just pinned today's show notes in the chat box. So the topic today is health and safety tips, but non-scary ones. So I want to give you a little bit background on today's presenter and how I came to this topic, because I think it really informs the type of session that we're going to have today. So when I started the POOLaide webinars, there were some topics I really knew I wanted to cover. So for example, in-service, reopening a pool after COVID, health and safety, accessibility, right? There's core topics that we all need in aquatics. Then you go to a conference or a day-long training session, and there's core topics that you need. And then there's sometimes core topics that we don't cover as much as we actually need them, because there's this understanding, even though it's wrong, that everybody already has that area of their life under control. So health and safety is something that is a huge part of aquatics. Now, many of us are first aid certified, we might be first aid instructors, we may even be first aid instructor trainers. And so we think about health and safety every single day on our job, at the pool, right? We think about our lifeguards not placing themselves at risk during rescues, wearing barrier devices such as gloves and masks, personal protective equipment in the filter room. All of those things we already do. The challenge for myself, and I can speak only for myself, but the challenge for me when I moved into a municipal job where I was responsible as the facility manager was the documentation piece, right? I can tell my staff that they need to walk on deck and wear shoes, and I can make the administrative changing tile or non-slip flooring or signage. That I can do, but where I always really struggled was the documentation. So in Canada, and every jurisdiction will be different, you have things like job hazard assessments, safe work procedures, all of that stuff like made me want to pull my hair out. And so the reason I asked today's presenter to be here, Kira Maslak was somebody that I worked with at a previous aquatic facility. And the thing I love about Kira and why I asked her to present today was I love her attitude is that everything is very accessible. So Kira is that colleague that you really want to have on your team because she says, you know what, we're going to figure it out and let's not be fussy about it, but we need to get something in place. How can we do that in small steps, right? And so today is very much going to be a conversation about making your health and safety documentation. Just what are the small steps you can take? We are not going to do a full audit today. We're not going to give you a long laundry list or checklist of things you have to do. That is going to be city, state, province, facility specific, and you will need to check your local legislation for specifics. But I wanted to bring on somebody to be who's enthusiastic about health and safety, like the paperwork that I hate, to hear from her about this in a way that maybe can energize us as we're coming. I would say we're still midway in COVID, but we have to update all these procedures and protocols right now anyway. Why not be re-inspired and have her share some tips and strategies in a kind of more discussion and narrative way. So that's my very long introduction for Kira Maslak. I'm going to authorize her microphone in just a moment, and I'll put it the call-in numbers. But the layout for today is that she will be presenting what she's got presented, and then we're also going to have kind of a discussion and a Q&A. So I'm going to turn on the Q&A feature. You guys will now see in your chat box a question mark. So as we go through, you will be able to ask questions, many of which I will hold until the end. But this way it's nice because I can see it more easily in the chat box. This is a question as an example. So if you put the question mark, that will be helpful. So I'm going to turn off my camera. I'm going to authorize Kira's microphone, and then we will jump right in. So welcome to Kira. And I'd love you guys in the chat box to put something supportive, say like hi or welcome to Kira, because I know that she's not thrilled that I asked her to do this. I kind of voluntold her. I know she's going to be awesome, but I would appreciate if you guys also give her a bit of a shout out because it's really scary to present to 100 people. Can you hear? You want to say something, Kira, so we can make sure we hear you? 1 second. I don't hear you yet, Kira. 1 second.
Hello?
Perfect. Keep talking.
We can hear me? All right.
I'm going to go away so we can see Kira's graphic. 1 second. And I'll be in the...
Oh, hello? All right. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you guys for your support. So we're going to talk about workplace health and safety, like Katie talked about there. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. If you've got questions, please, please, please let me know. If I don't have the answer, we will definitely look into the answer. So to start off, excuse me. Oh, is this gonna work? So to start off, a little bit about me. So my name's Kira Maslak. I live and work in High River. I actually have 4 kids with me, and I realized today that in this time of isolation and social distancing, we have been home for 60 days, which I'm really proud to say that I still have 4 children. It's been kind of a struggle. I know a lot of people are in the same boat there. My experience with health and safety has been kind of a weird, winding road. So I started to work for the town of High River over 9 years ago. Actually started in the concession area myself. Worked my way up to customer service, had the opportunity to become a health and safety peer auditor, which kind of put my foot in the door of health and safety. I realized during that time that I really liked health and safety. After that, I got the opportunity to work as a health and safety assistant for the town of High River following the flood. Since then, I am now back in more of my current role, which is customer service and bookings administrator. But now with the situation of COVID-19, I have actually floated back to health and safety to assist our town. My certifications, so I am a AMSA peer auditor for the health and safety management systems. I have my AMSA health and safety advisor certification. And I also have my University of Calgary Health, Safety and Environment certificate while working more towards my diploma. For those of you who don't know, AMSA is Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association. That is our certifying partner for municipalities in Alberta. So to move on, so where do you guys start with health and safety? I always like to say baby steps. It's not an easy process. You can go down the rabbit hole, and once you get down that rabbit hole of health and safety, nothing gets done, right? You get a pile of paperwork and it just sits there. I know health and safety as itself is very overwhelming. So baby steps. What you want to do is, first of all, is prioritize. Look at what you have to do health and safety wise and make a list of what's more important right now. The other stuff will come. Like Katie was saying at the beginning, sometimes it's just about getting it on a piece of paper, right? To start, we always talk about due diligence in health and safety. And what does this mean? So due diligence is defined as the level of judgment, care, prudence, determination, and activity that a person would reasonably be expected to do under particular circumstances. Now, our due diligence also looks and is based on industry. So the due diligence for people in aquatics is going to be different from somebody, say, who is in utilities and operations or parks, right? We kind of look at 3 factors with our due diligence. That's foreseeability, we look at the preventability, and we also look at the control. So the control is what could have been done or who was responsible at that moment, right? We like to also deal with your higher hazard tasks first, right? Having those procedures and protocols and assessments done are very important. So I know with most aquatic facilities, you guys are going to be looking at your chemical procedures. Those would be a higher hazard task that you guys have to deal with day to day, right? We also look at the importance of documentation, right? We want to make sure that once you have figured out your tasks and what you need to be controlling, creating processes for hazard assessments, making sure that you have those processes written down and shared with your staff, right? I find a lot of divisions within municipalities, what happens is we tend to say this needs to get done, but it doesn't actually get done, right? So you're going to have to break off bits and pieces and chunks of it and use your team to create your hazard assessments and processes. Your team are the people on the ground doing things every single day. We tend to always tag one person to our health and safety tasks. And then what happens is that one person bangs out all of these processes and hazard assessments and all of this documentation, puts it into a binder, hands it out to everybody and says, here you go. The issues we're finding with that kind of approach with health and safety is you guys deal with a lot of junior guards, casuals, kids that are in high school. When you hand them a binder full of paperwork, they're not going to read it. When they don't read it, then you're looking at, they're not going to follow those processes. If we bring them into that process and make it a team effort, I find we tend to get a lot more buy-in, which creates a positive health and safety culture, right? And with that buy-in, you are going to find that people find that they have more of a personal attachment to it, right? They are going to, oh, I just lost you guys. Hold on a second. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. Sorry, I dropped my mouse and it shut everything off on me. Sorry, what I was saying. So if you've got your team to create these processes and look at these hazards together, you're going to find that you're going to get a lot more compliance with these processes. Now, moving forward with that, Google is your friend. This is huge when you are looking at your health and safety and trying to figure out what are my hazards in my area, what are the things I should be doing for health and safety as a whole, right? The first thing you want to do is know your responsibilities and accountabilities. As a supervisor, you're going to have different responsibilities and accountabilities compared to a worker. As a worker, my responsibility may be just to follow the processes and procedures that my supervisor puts into place, right? We're also looking at training, education. This can be in-house training, in-house education. It doesn't have to be formal training to be classified as training in health and safety, right? You're going to be looking for templates, industry standards, your local legislation, like Katie said. It's going to change from where you are. The biggest thing I like to say is if you don't know something, Google it. I know with our current Alberta occupational health and safety legislation, if you Google WHMIS, OH&S, you will find resources. Sorry, I got distracted by Katie typing there. So with WHMIS, occupational health and safety, those are the types of things that I even find myself Googling a lot. I deal a lot with other municipalities that are local. I deal with a lot of our, sorry, our certified partner, AMSA. I deal a lot with them. I don't know if places in, say, the United States have certifying partners. I'm not sure how that actually goes into there, but use the people that are providing your training. Ask questions. What do they do? You might not be able to completely copy their processes, their procedures, etc., but you can use those as a template to help get yourself moving and going with that stuff. So the main thing that we talk about when you are assessing your hazards and what you're doing day to day is you're going to identify first off what you want to do, identify what you're doing, right? Don't dial in too deep. The problems we find a lot of the times when you dial in too deep is you go into that rabbit hole. If you're looking at cleaning tasks, make it broad. If you don't have to have that step-by-step process, make that a broad cleaning tasks. Don't go into cleaning the toilet, cleaning the mirror, scrubbing the floor, that kind of stuff. You can make it broad and then dial in more if you have to later on. I find the more broad you make it, the less complicated it's going to seem in the long run. You're going to want to, then once you identify those tasks, you're going to want to assess the hazards associated with those tasks, right? Usually when we're looking at our hazards, we're looking at chemical hazards, we're looking at biological hazards, we're looking at physical hazards, we are looking at psychological hazards, but we're also looking more with the new legislation at violence and harassment in the workplace, which I know from a lot of times working at the pool area for about 9 years now, you guys deal with a lot of harassment situations from patrons. I know we've had some lifeguards, right? The older generation doesn't quite seem to understand sometimes that what they say might not be appropriate. I know we used to have a male guard at our pool that would do aquasize class, and he was a nice looking boy. He was young, and the older ladies didn't see any issues with, asking him to teach with his shirt off or, making comments such as that. So that's a really big one that I'm finding our aquatic staff are having to deal with a lot with our patrons, is that harassment side, which has now become into legislation. I know a lot of municipalities are now still trying to get policies and procedures in place on how to handle all of that as well, right? It's not something new that's happening to our staff. It's just we're now learning and receiving the tools on how to deal with it a little bit better. So once we've kind of looked at our hazards, like I said, our psychological hazards, our physical, our chemical, biological, we want to control those hazards, right? Like you guys know, you use your PPE such as gloves, masks, face shields for chemical use, all of that stuff. So you're going to look at how you're going to control those hazards with your PPE, whether you use administrative controls such as your procedures. You're going to be looking at controls, your engineering controls, so your physical hard controls. So with your hazard controls, we always like to eliminate those first off. When we're eliminating those controls, you kind of look at substitutions as well. I know you can't in the pool often change it. You can't change out chlorine for something different. We know that. But maybe you're cleaning products. You can change from one product to another product that isn't quite as hazardous, right? We're going to want to create processes on how to use those controls and control those hazards. And then the main part of all of this stuff is sharing and educating with your staff, right? I find the biggest piece is we tend to get all of these processes in place, these policies, these assessments, all this paperwork, but then it just sits in a binder. We don't tend to share it properly with our staff and make sure that they understand their responsibilities in this process. And I know Katie was saying with a lot of our aquatic facilities, they're kind of asking the question, how do I assess my hazards? But then what do you do with them? How do you create procedures or policies? And what's the main difference between a procedure and a practice? We tend I know municipal health and safety, we talk a lot about standard operating procedures, SOPs. These are for our higher hazard tasks. They're a step-by-step instruction on how to do a task. These we like to kind of say are the big ones. These are the ones that we want people to know, to understand, the whole thing, the whole steps. And that way we can make sure that everyone is staying safe, right? Our safe work practices, we like to say they're just a guideline. They're a best practice. They're for lower hazard tasks. They're not as critical as our SOPs. Like I said, with health and safety, it's really hard to go through that rabbit hole. Myself, I have a lot of knowledge on municipal health and safety. I have bits and pieces of knowledge. I'm not an expert in certain areas, such as ergonomics, right? I have a general knowledge. I know a lot of people in municipal health and safety, they kind of have those bits and pieces and that general knowledge of all areas. When you need to ask for help, ask for help. I find we don't do this enough. Talk with your like facilities, share documents, share ideas, ask questions, get your network going, and don't be afraid to ask. And the biggest thing is when you have a problem or an issue or something you really aren't quite sure about it, go to a subject matter expert. We always say, if you're dealing with a big ergonomic concern or issue, right, hire an ergonomist. We did that for our customer service desk, and it has made a world of difference, right? So sometimes you kind of have to say, you know what, I don't know what to do. and ask somebody who will. I use a lot of different resources myself when looking for information. I look at our Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. I look at a lot of WorkSafe BC. WorkSafe BC has a ton of information on workplace health and safety, and they have some really good quality infographics for staff. They have videos. They have a whole assortment of tools and resources there. I also look to our local Alberta RFP group, talk with people there about what they can help with. Same with our Alberta Recreation and Parks Association, our core certifiers, so AMSA, we look at too a lot as well. A couple things that I do look at as well lately. I don't do a whole lot of YouTube stuff myself or podcasts. One that I do like to share mostly with younger workers, because sometimes I find a little shock value helps in getting the message across, is Bloody Lucky Alberta. They've got some safety videos. They are geared towards youth. But again, like I said here, please be warned, there are some pretty graphic things. So always kind of screen them first, or, talk to your group and get a feel for them as well, right? And of course, mainly right now during COVID-19, a really big help for myself has been maintaining mental fitness. They have been putting on about 30-minute webinars every Tuesday at 10 o'clock that have been very, very helpful in just reassessing myself during this time, and my own mental health. Now, I kind of blew through that pretty quickly, a lot quicker than I anticipated.
No, hey, you know what? I appreciate when somebody gets to the point and doesn't waste time, right? Like that right now, just messaging with somebody who was talking about a Zoom call that they were on that could have been an email, right? We've all experienced that. We don't need to make something longer than it needs to be. I do also want to have a great discussion. So thank you to Kira. Let's leave, do you want to go back, Kira? Let's leave up, since it's just my face, let's leave up a couple slides, like the flow that you had for breaking down tasks, I think would be good for people to look at while we do some questions and discussion. I can talk that back for you. Sorry, I shouldn't have voluntold you for that.
No, that's okay.
Here for a little bit.
It's a lot harder, I think, when you're just staring at your own slides and not people.
Oh, 100%. You're like, am I moving too fast? Am I moving too slow? But I want to, first of all, say thank you. I know this is the first thing kind of like this that you've done, so I really appreciate that. I know it's, again, for those of you in the audience, you get a sense if you've been in conferences or Zoom calls recently. Joey just texted me, unfortunately, the North Texas Aquatic Association, their Zoom call got hacked yesterday, so I feel for them. These are very, very difficult to run, and they're very, very hard to produce. So thank you to presenters that are figuring out on the fly how to adapt their knowledge and their expertise. So I'm going to go to Colm's question in just a second, but I definitely want to start by highlighting, Kira, I love that you really said share the workload, because you are so correct. How many of us have a health and safety officer or a designated lifeguard or a designated team lead, and they only do the health and safety portfolio, and then the task list or the actual process is not actually what the guards are doing? How can we avoid that?
Sorry, was that? So okay. I think, like I said, in avoiding that is using your team. The biggest thing that I always like to do is during your safety meetings or even your in-services, breaking down what processes do you have to do. So say we need to do a hazard assessment and process on cleaning bathrooms. And then we need to have a hazard assessment and process on adding chemical to the pool. Well, make little teams within your staff of 3, 4, however many people you want, and kind of task each group to do one each, right? That kind of lightens the load, for one person. One person's not doing everything. But like I said, you get that buy-in with your team, right? I think it is such a huge thing with our staff and involving them in the process, because I think you get more compliance that way. People are a little more proud because they worked on it, they did it, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I love the tip you gave me a long time ago, similar to the team idea. Maybe you do a 15-minute at the beginning of in-service, you hand out a bunch of standard operating procedures or job hazard assessments, and you rotate them around the room in 10 minutes. And, 5 people look at 5 different assessments, and then somebody administratively makes the edits later. Like, it's not the final document, but at least you have 5 or 6 different sets of eyes. Or every month at your health and safety meeting, you pull out 2 assessments and everybody in the meeting discusses them, and then you update 2 a month and 24 a year, right? Like, strategies like that blew my mind when I met you, because I had always been told that it was my job as the supervisor. I was responsible for all these documents and I take ownership of that, but then I should be writing things that I had no business writing because I was disconnected from what happens. Like you said, I'm not cleaning the mirrors. I think we do it this way. And then the guard says, oh no, we've never done it that way. We do this other thing. Well, how do we know that?
Yeah. Well, and I think perspective is huge too. Even sometimes when you're looking at hazards in your area, pull somebody that doesn't work in your area, pull them in to look and see what type of hazards they see, right?
Yeah.
Because getting that different perspective can help, because we tend to get a little blind to our own area because it's the same every single day, right?
Yeah, no, and I love that. That's what I've got to when I was working with you, Kira, and you were going and visiting different departments, like you said, utilities, operations, parks, even administrative staff coming into an aquatics environment. Yes, we judge often, and we love you, Kira, but we judge non-poolies, right? For like, they don't understand us, but they still bring that fresh perspective of we've become complacent with some of our high-risk behaviors, like lane rope reels. How many of you have had staff injured by a flinging tail of a lane rope? Or how many of you have had staff that have stubbed their toe moving a starting block, or any sort of basic things that we just are like, well, that's what we do in aquatics, but then we become blind to the risk and the behavior. Let's go to Colm's question. 1 second, I'm going to toggle here. As you have questions, you guys put them in the chat box with the exclamation mark, and then I can pull them to the screen. So Kira, can you go back to the due diligence again? That was fascinating.
Of course. So like I said, a lot of your due diligence is based on industry. The 3 factors that I was talking about was foreseeability, preventability, and control. And like I said, the control bit is what could have been done or who was the responsible person present.
And any other thoughts just generally on due diligence, Kira? Do you find, are many people doing it? Are many departments not doing it? How is it measured?
I think with our due diligence, what happens is we know what needs to be done. We get really wrapped up in the quantity of stuff that needs to be done, right? And then nothing gets done, right? Due diligence a lot is about making sure you are doing your best in keeping everybody safe, right? Making sure that you're following legislation, that you have your policies in place, your procedures, your hazard assessments, your training, right? Making sure that everyone is aware of their responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I'd be curious to know your thoughts, Kira. Do you find that non-safety professionals really understand due diligence? Because I would think a lot of people, like when I deal with younger staff, they don't realize that it's not just like we're not at your house, and if you choose to use a knife unsafely, that's not my problem. We're in a workplace. That threshold is much higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main thing with a lot of our younger people is teaching them, right? They're not going to know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of kids are starting to look at more health and safety stuff in high school, which is really, really good. But usually I'm finding, at least with the municipality, that when they get to the town of High River, we are their very first exposure at all for everything.
Especially, I remember that they've never had workplace hazardous material information system training, right? Mm-hmm. They don't know what an SDS sheet is, a safety data sheet. They don't, like, that always blew my mind that some of them coming from fast food or retail. I mean, retail may be different, but fast food, especially with fryers and heat sources, and it just blew my mind that some had never had that training.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Lauren has a question. I'll put it on the screen. Anybody is welcome to submit questions in the chat box. So are there other organizations or municipalities that have designated aquatics representatives on the OH&S committee, either from management or employee side? So I know, Lauren, you were asking in the chat box for people to respond, but Kira, do you find, like, working with other municipalities, do you see aquatics people at the table, or do we have to fight for that?
I haven't seen it as much previously. Now, our legislation in Alberta has recently, it changed to include more of our people in each facility, but then it has changed again. So I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. I do know that with the first change, we were looking at having more representation from our aquatics people from each division within our municipalities, right? I think it's really good to have a diverse representation on your joint health and safety committee, because if you have a committee for a municipality that is all administrative staff, you're not going to get a true representation of what is happening in your organization.
So true. Yeah, and I think, and you could speak to that in any department, whether it's operations or parks, right? That person who's used to working behind a door in an office 8 to 4 has no understanding of using a mower or driving a skid steer or moving lane ropes or dealing with angry customers. I think that it's not transferable. It's not the same work environment, even though it's the same organization, is huge. Mm-hmm. Even between pools, indoor pool versus outdoor pool, spray park versus, the gym. It's not the same thing at all.
No, you're right on that. It's right. And you need to have that understanding, right? That everybody has that different perspective that I was talking about, right?
Let's take a little bit of a side dip. I don't want to spend too much time on COVID because we're so sick of it. But you being a health and safety professional, what kinds of documents and processes are you looking at right now or updating or you think are coming down the pipe for, being back in the workplace in the future?
So a lot of what we are doing is, definitely we are following our provincial guidelines that are being sent out. What we have done as an organization, we have created some safe work practices. So one is on vehicle cleaning. So a whole process on making sure that we are wiping everything down, people are wearing gloves. We've added a safe work practice on proper PPE use. during pandemic times. So how to put on a mask, how to take off your mask, proper hygiene practices, washing your hands, when do you use gloves. We are currently looking at some processes for re-entry into our buildings. I'm not sure how that's going to look quite yet. I'm assuming that we're still going to be practicing that physical distancing with people. I know we have a lot of our divisions have implemented a one person per vehicle policy, or more of a procedure, really. They have said that, if you're going to have to use a vehicle with somebody, right, wearing a mask, using proper hygiene, yeah, I think a lot of it is, it's going to be slow, right? It's going to be a very slow process in getting back to a new normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think along with that is those baby steps.
I have a bit of a dumb question. Is it, what makes it necessary, for example, for your organization to write down the steps to removing gloves and a mask versus pulling that directly off the internet? I don't know.
I think what helps with that is it gives, a lot of your information you do pull from the internet, right? You
Yeah.
pull from different sources, you put it together, you put it on your letterhead, that kind of stuff. But I think it helps. With that perception with your staff that
Okay.
this is our process. We are implementing it. We want you to follow it. We care enough to put something together rather than just pull something off the internet and share it everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it adds that little bit of a personal touch to it, where people think you care a little bit more, right? Which you do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that perception, right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I want to make sure that I didn't say this, but I put it in the chat box earlier. Canadians, make sure you're aware of the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. And I'll have you, Kira, in just a second, talk about kind of the work that they do and resources on their website. But make sure you use the website. There's so much on there that people don't even realize is free or $10. Can you talk here about the resources on the CCOHS website?
Oh my gosh. Everything.
Yeah.
They
Why we
have
day there.
a lot of resources on WMIS, whether it's infographics, posters, training. They have a lot of free training right now with the COVID-19. They do a lot of information on new legislation that has come out, tips, how, what is your due diligence? They talk a lot about due diligence, responsibilities, what should you be doing? See what else is there. Like I said, lots and lots of training,
Like I didn't
hazard
realize.
assessment training. Oh,
No, sorry, I forget that there's a lag. What about the topics? Like I never understood how many health and safety areas there were on the CCOHS website until I browsed. Like you mentioned ergonomics, but there's so much more to health and safety than ergonomics.
yep. So you're looking at ergonomics, physical hazards, chemical hazards. There's some information on biological hazards on there. They look at heat stress, cold stress. There's
basically go check it out. There's
yeah,
so
pretty much. and the one nice thing I find about CCOHS too is use the search bar, right? Yeah. They really do have bits and pieces on everything.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Lori's question in just a sec, but I do, lastly, on CCOHS, I want to tell Canadians and Americans, I mean, you can look at our resources too to get ideas. Just always refer, in the US, you have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. But I mean, for ideas, you can certainly look at the website. But Canadians, I want to make sure you know that WMIS is a course that many municipalities, in my experience, they have a local company that they like to use with WMIS, and that's okay. But there is also WMIS you can purchase for your staff for $10 or $15 on the CCOHS website. There's PDFs, there's downloads, there's lesson plans, there's infographics. LinkedIn, I know, Kira, you got me connected to them on LinkedIn. They have great resources on their LinkedIn page. So really, nobody should feel alone in these health and safety items, because the CCOHS website is there. Many people are not using it at all, and that's the sad part.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put Lori's question up on the board. 1 second. Just toggling. Okay, so Lori's asking, as we go back to reopening aquatic facilities or anywhere, operations yards, recreation facilities, what are your thoughts, Kira, on public restrooms and how we can police them?
Whew.
Just some thoughts. Don't feel stressed.
Just some thoughts. So my thoughts is implementing increased cleaning procedures or policies, right? I know a lot of times, you're cleaning a public bathroom once, twice a day, depending on your facility. Definitely upping that up, doing it every 45 minutes, every hour. I know a lot of restrooms have, I want to say, limited the space in their restrooms as well. They've closed every second stall for use, that kind of thing, to help minimize the people in there at one time. I think the hardest part would be implementation, right? In that, and trying to keep people physically distanced, but definitely I would post signage on expectations with physical distancing, and up your cleaning schedules.
Yeah, I think I was trying to pin it in the chat box. Sorry, I lost my scroll a little bit. So Lori, to your question as well, if you look in the chat box right now, it's blue. It'll say Canadian Shopify files. It's like a long address. If you click on that, that is the session I delivered yesterday for the Canadian Red Cross Saskatchewan and Manitoba Aquatic Conference. I'm not allowed to share the recording yet. It will probably be a couple months before I can, but you can look at my slides. And I do discuss in one of the slides, similar to what Kira said, there's reducing occupancy so that there's spacing between stalls or between sinks or between people. But then there's also reducing occupancy so there's less to clean. Like if people have to wait to use the same washroom, there's a trade-off in terms of cleaning more often, but fewer spaces. And I'm not saying that's right for every application, but I definitely, in one of the slides, maybe like 13, 14, or 15, I mention that's a consideration, right? And Kira, I'm sure you have thoughts too about high touch points, high volume facilities, right? There's a lot to consider, right, when we think about these processes.
Mm-hmm. And there's only, you got to think about your staff as well, right? You're probably working with limited staff. A lot of places are kind of back to a bare bones staffing, right? And when you up those cleaning, that's what they're going to be doing all day, right? Is cleaning those bathrooms, cleaning those high touch points. That it'll be that constant rotation, which, right, you also have to look at that benefit of, are we stressing our staff out too much over it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Generally, we could spend all day talking about whether it's right or wrong to reopen a pool right now. That's a whole topic we can't get into. That's kind of where my session went yesterday. I pretty strongly took the perspective that you should wait and not jump into anything. But certainly, I love your piece, Kira. Like if the staff are not going to do it, or they're not going to follow along, or the personality doesn't match what you need them to do, you need to really consider what you're asking them to do, because there's a risk that if you know they're not going to follow the procedure or wear the PPE, that there is some liability there as a supervisor employer if you're aware that they won't do it.
Yeah, very, very true.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience? You're an auditor, so you go to different organizations. Can you talk generally when you audit other facilities, like what do you see wrong with either their health and safety programs or documentations, just in general, so that people can feel either not as bad that theirs is also bad, or like where they can go from there?
The biggest thing I find is communication. Huge. That is always the one, I don't want to say failing, but the one area for improvement is always communication. Our supervisors, our managers, our directors, they think they're communicating in ways that their staff are retaining the information. They're not. I find a lot of places that we go to that our staff, they don't know that there's policies and procedures in place. They don't know that there's a joint health and safety committee, and I find a lot of our managers, our directors, our supervisors, they're saying, well, we've told them, we've sent emails, we've done this, but we're not finding that way to really catch their attention, right? And I'm not sure, it probably looks different for every facility out there, but how do we engage our staff enough with these processes and these policies that they know where to go to find this stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Kira. It's different for every facility. So some facilities may have a video culture where they send around a video link and then a quiz, and there's, they've spent 40 hours filming information. And other places they may have a drive, like a shared document that you read. And then other places will have a binder, and other places will have a Kahoot online quiz. And there is no one solution that works for every facility. What I like as a person may be different from what you like. And then nothing gets done, right? Because we have these lofty plans, and then nothing ever happens either.
Yeah.
Any other areas? You mentioned communication. Any other big ones that you see frequently deficient?
Communication, training documentation is a really, really big one. I know I find a lot with aquatic facilities. You guys are amazing in keeping track, obviously, of your life-saving certificates, your first aid, your all of that stuff. But when it falls outside of your aquatics industry certifications, I find a lot of them don't keep track of that stuff. I know in Alberta, we look a lot at WMIS training. We look a lot at hazard assessment training. We look at inspection training, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Those ones, usually we got to keep track of that stuff as well.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to think, what kind of other training would there be? I guess like confined space or H2S or any sort of like courses like that have to be tracked as well, you're saying?
Yeah.
Evan, I loved your comment. Evan, I'm just going to put it on the screen so people can see it. I really want to just highlight, Evan made a great comment that I think is a way that we can definitely, whoops, sorry, that's not the right one. Okay, so Evan said a little bit earlier, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate, right? So how many of us have had these great visions for in-service and then it falls flat on its face, and it's nowhere between what we had envisioned and what reality? Same thing with health and safety, right? So we could say we have a great health and safety culture, but then if we tolerate, so the one example I gave a few webinars ago, I sent a guy home once, like 6 or 7 years ago. I told him to move the start blocks after a swim meet. He needed to wear the stainless steel rubber boots. And he didn't want to because he wanted to go see his girlfriend in 2 hours or whatever. Like he wanted to finish the work, and I had to send him off shift because he wasn't listening and he kept moving 100-pound start blocks in flip-flops on a wet pool deck. right? So what do you tolerate at your facility, right? And I'm sure, Kira, what kinds of issues you see in the workplace with tolerating less safe behaviors?
Oh, yeah, a lot of it's that, do as I say, not as I do. Um, I think sometimes where we require in our facility, if you're doing a task that you don't normally do, that's not part of your normal day-to-day tasks, you will do a pre-job or a field level hazard assessment. And I find a lot of times you'll get people who are like, I'm not doing something that bad, so I'm just going to do it without doing the paperwork, right? Um, it's those little kind of things that we start to do, not following procedures, because I've done this for 5, 10 years, and this is how I do it. This is how I've always done it. I don't need that, right? A lot of it is that complacency, right? We do kind of start to see that complacency after a while in a lot of our tasks that we do day to day to day to day, right? Or like you said, right? I'm in a rush. I want to get home. I want to do this. If I go and change my shoes, it's going to take me an extra 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, not even like
Not even, right? Not
like,
even. But in my mind, it's going to take too long.
yeah. Well, and I know, speaking for myself, the most number of staff injuries I've had have either been something like that or staff making a decision that they, in their genuine hearts, they were trying to serve the organization, but they made a shortcut, or they made a decision that was poorly informed in an attempt to keep everything copacetic and running. Well, I'm going to take this medicine and then I'll be able to work, or I'm not going to go back and get my safety glasses, and then I'm going to get spray in my eye, right? People just not anticipating that operator error, as I'm sure you know, is a big piece of just, the more we do it, the more complacent we get. And sometimes the newer things that are more dangerous, we are more safe with, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me as a pool operator. I get into this conversation often. People tell me how dangerous chlorine gas is. And I will say, as a pool operator, I'll take chlorine gas over liquid chlorine many days, because people are terrified of chlorine gas. They are super compliant with the safety, and they'll let their staff get liquid chlorine in their eyes, down their shirt, on their pants every day of the week, and could care less because it's just chlorine,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Do you find, in your experience, do more people get injured or more issues at work because of those new tasks that they haven't done before? They're skipping doing something, or it's the routine complacency?
I think it always the routine complacency, right? We get into our habits, right? And that's usually when things kind of tend to go wrong, right? And like you said, right, looking at it as the perspective of, well, I got to get this done. I got to get it done now. I can't find my safety glasses. I'm just going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's happened before. You think nothing's going to happen this time, and then something happens, right?
Okay, so we'll take the last couple questions if anyone has any, but I want to try and end on a positive note and really crowdsource together from Kira and from you guys. Like, if we're looking at health and safety in general, Kira's already mentioned, involve your team on the documentation. Don't do it all yourself. Outsource it. Ask somebody if they're passionate about health and safety, or they want a project, or they want extra hours. But I also want to highlight, Kira, you're a big proponent. You said earlier in the session about making more generic tasks. So I'm a very process person, and it would make me feel very accomplished to have a cleaning the mirror in the bathroom procedure and a cleaning the mirror in the change rooms procedure, right? And you've said that that's a bad idea because we need them to actually get done. So what are some other basic things you would tell somebody if they started at a new pool? Because it's basically like going to a new pool when we go back to work. Where to look for health and safety stuff, what to start on. What would you suggest to get started?
Whew. Um, Well, to touch base on my trying to, not do just the mirror, right? Having processes to do that. The other thing is you get that, we call it safety fatigue. When you have a book of 100 procedures, it's really hard for people to follow through on all of it, right? Because they're going to start reading, they're going to start saying, okay, you've got a safe work practice for cleaning the mirror. Kate read that one. Oh, the toilet, read that one. And then they start to kind of fade out, right? They're not really reading your procedures. They're just going to start scanning them. And that's when we start to miss the important ones, right? With our reopenings, like I said, I would look at your higher hazard things first. If you don't have stuff in place, look at what kind of situations are your staff going to be dealing with reopening, right? The main one is going to be
clients, people.
It's your clients and their anxiety may be coming back, your staff's anxiety and coming back, dealing with the extra workload in probably extra cleaning, if you're wearing masks, what does all of that look like? What kind of extra things are we now piling on to our staff?
Yeah, and I think that's a huge piece, Kira. Like you said, it's going to be more work with the same resources or even less resources, less money. And it's very important that it's going to be more cleaning. And we need to make sure that we dedicate the appropriate amount of time in the workday as well as with the job description to doing that cleaning. How many of us in aquatics ask lifeguards to polish the chrome or wipe something between rotations? That's not going to be possible when we reopen because sanitation is going to be as important as lifeguarding. And we can't just say, okay, here, you take the spray bottle, go do this while I go back on the pool deck. There have to be clear guidelines about what you finish sanitizing before you move on to anything else. Because if it's time to sanitize, you can't just dump it another hour, right?
Very true.
I'm just looking in the chat box. Lynn, okay, Lynn is commenting. Sorry, she has a cleaning checklist now, very updated. Sorry, very easy to update it when they reopen. Keep it simple, she says, and job specific. Some people are better cleaners than others, and all can learn. Not all are willing. So I think that's a good note, as Kira's been saying too. Like if they're not going to do it, it could be beautifully formatted, it could be comprehensive, but if they're not going to follow it or do it, then you need to look at what you're doing. I had one quick question I thought of, Kira, while you were talking. What is your opinion on one binder or two binders? This comes up a lot in aquatics. Like, do you have a lifeguard safety binder versus a filter room safety binder versus a cleaning safety room binder? What are your thoughts on that for documentation?
Ooh. I think it's based on facility and what your staff need. If you have a safety binder that is all the way across the facility from your filter room, but you have staff that are always referencing in your filter room, maybe it's best to have it in two places, right? Yeah, that's a really tough one. I like one binder myself. As a auditor, everything in one spot is beautiful, but it's not always feasible to what your staff need, right? With that, pull your staff, see what they prefer. If they like having one big binder, right? Just making sure it's accessible.
Yeah, I can give some background. So this question comes up a lot when I teach certified pool operator courses. People say, well, why do we need a pool binder? We have a building binder. And I'll say, okay, well, if you're a rec center, you have ice, you have maintenance, you have mechanical, you have you probably have this many safety data sheets. And so if somebody gets pool chemical in their eye and it's not alphabetized or area folders or area sections of dividers, then maybe you need a separate binder for the pool, and maybe they're stored next to each other. But if somebody's got something in their eye and you haven't put the sheets in order, that is one reason that some facilities consider doing that. Just I'm not saying it's the right or wrong answer, but it's a consideration.
Yep.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much to Kira Maslach. This is a little bit of a different format for today, so thank you for sticking with us. I really wanted to inspire you to just get started, because I know, for speaking for myself, health and safety documentation is like my least favorite thing next to scheduling. So sorry, I'll just put that out there. Scheduling, we all love scheduling. It's just as awesome. So we'll say thank you to Kira Maslach. I will just make a couple of announcements and then we will call it quits for today. So thank you, Kira. You can turn off your mic.
Thank you, guys.
Questions, you can put them in the chat box. So today is Wednesday. We have our last 4 webinars. If you're just joining us, I put the links in the chat box, but I will post them again. Just give you a quick synopsis. So on Friday of this week, we are going to have a session with Lisa Reinders discussing grants and funding for aquatics projects. So this is not a specific provincial, federal, US, state, how to fill out a form. This is just talking about if you have a project or an initiative or something you want to do at your facility, how can you start to build community buy-in to get funding, and then you will have to go out and get the funding. But what does that process look like? She's going to be a great presenter. She has a lot of experience getting funding for capital projects, things such as skateboard parks, wind farms. She's been involved with a lot of projects. Coming up on Monday, we have 2 ladies from the University of North Texas. They will be talking online in-service now and in the future. So that is going to be a great session regarding how we use online in-service now, but also more in the future. That is what interests me as a presenter, as an aquatics professional, is how can we take the best and the worst of online training? This has been our guinea pig stage. Now, how can we pioneer forward with using it well? So that's coming up on Monday. Next Wednesday, some of you will know Eileen Kwan, City of Calgary. So she's going to be doing a session on budget narrative post-COVID. What does that mean? It means it's not a finance conversation, how to build a budget. It's a conversation about how to look at your budget and commitments and conversations, expectations, and responsibilities after COVID. Eileen is a really great facilitator. I worked directly for her for 4 months and indirectly with her for 2 to 3 years. She transformed how I negotiate and navigate projects, and she will bring a lot of tips. If the topic or the description sounds a little bit odd to you, just trust me, she is a great presenter. And so most people will need this session, whether they think they need it or not. It's going to be a great session. And then next Friday is our last live session with me. So you can register for that if you are interested. I'm thrilled. I have a sponsor that reached out to me last night. They are going to be doing 2 giveaways next Friday, 2 $100 gift cards. You can look for more information on Instagram in the next few days. I will be announcing that when I finalize the final details with them. So thank you so much for being here. Those of you that, I should also post the Padlet. So if you're interested in contributing to next Friday, what the questions are you'd like me to answer, please make sure you go online and complete the Padlet. I will keep the chat box open for a few minutes, so you will have access to all of these live links. I know there's a question on the Padlet, so thank you for your concern. There's people who are very concerned about me and my work. Thank you so much. I will be fine. We've got about 10 days left of these webinars. I have 2 CPO classes coming up, certified pool operator classes. The virtual classes are approved across Canada for pool operator training requirements. So if you're interested in supporting my business, that's how I keep the lights on in my house, is I'm doing online training right now while physical distancing requirements are such that we can't get into a classroom in Canada. I do also have a US Imperial class next week for Americans. So those of you who have asked how to support me, that's a very, very helpful way. I know $450 Canadian is a lot for many people. So if you can't do it now, I completely understand. And hopefully we can connect in person when in-person classes resume later this fall. I teach in many locations. If you have questions, I will stay on here for a few more minutes. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, whatever you are doing. Stay safe. We will connect with you on Friday if you're here. I did post the show notes for last Wednesday's session with Trevor Sherwood, so you can catch up with those. And I am still working on the outstanding sessions, so I have Friday and Monday still to upload. Those are coming, so just bear with me. I'm going to pop back shortly to the Saskatchewan and Manitoba Water Safety Conference, so that's where my week has gotten away from me. So I will post that link for Trevor's session, and then we will leave it at that for today. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.